Hey, hello everybody. I just want to give you a quick heads up. This episode has some great conversation, but we get into some pretty dark subjects. Content warning for some suicide talk. Two numbers I want to give out are the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 and the Trans Lifeline at 877-565-8860. Take care of each other and yourselves out there. All right, thanks. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, you are listening to Giving the Mic to the Wrong Person. To the Wrong Person? What the hell's the name of my show? Giving the Mic to the Wrong... You are listening to Giving the Mic to the Wrong Person. I'll get it right one of these times. This is this is the fun of broadcasting to tape instead of like to the real world. Is that we can at least assume that I can cut and edit this stuff. Or maybe not. Anyway, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between. You are listening to Giving the Mic to the Wrong Person. I am your host, Jeremy, coming to you from a lovely, this would be like, a late June Tuesday evening here in strangely sunny Portland, Oregon. Joined once again by old friends and new, and to bring you another important... in scare quotes, dispatch of info and infotainment, or something like that. Anyway, going around the room, first, if I'd like to introduce my semi-regular co-host, who has been quite generous with her time, especially since her day job has her fighting the man, sometimes literally, sometimes not.
Sometimes literally, sometimes not. Hey everybody, my name is Candy Luisa Herrera. I am your friendly neighborhood staffer and very casual occasional co-host of this show.
Thank you. And our very first candidate here on our show, as well as a member. Oh, good. What's
2.2 points up.
With how much? With how much?
68 reporting.
Nail biter. There we go. We're recording this right as the live election results are coming in from the Queen's DA race. So, folks, you might just hear a live reaction in vaguely real time. Anyway, new guests, could you please introduce yourself to the viewing audience?
Hi, thanks for having me on. I'm Paige Kreisman. I am running for the Oregon House of Representatives in District 42. I'm endorsed by Portland Democratic Socialists of America, where I serve as the electoral and legislative chair. I'm also a board member for Portland Tenants United, the largest tenants union in the city. But I was not aware that I'm the first candidate on this show. I was not told that. So now I'm got big shoes to fill. Now I'm all nervous.
They're your big
Jeremy.
shoes.
Oh, wow, okay. When you put it that way, I guess I'm fine now. Okay. I'm good. Let's do this.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us.
I'm Bryan Blanc. I am a Portland DSA member, and I'm serving as our membership working group co-chair, and also part of the team bringing a potential Bernie campaign to the chapter for general membership vote in a couple weeks.
Excellent. And but I wanted to bring it because, Paige, you have just recently announced your candidacy, and plus I had talked to you. God, it's been like 2 months ago, I think, about being on the show too. So, figured as I'm also shocking as damn near everybody hearing this would probably figure it out. The rest of us are also DSA members too, so we figured this would be fun to have everybody in. Because I am that imaginative a questioner, tell us your story. What's your basic? How about your basic candidate pitch? Either and feel free to answer this either from a biographical side or from a platform side.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think right now is a really important time for us to be putting forward our democratic socialist vision for the state of Oregon. This last legislative session that's wrapping up right now, we've seen a tremendous amount of compromises and handouts to the corporate class, to the corporate lobby, of which Democratic legislators in Oregon take thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars from every year. And we've seen that manifest in a rent control bill. I'm doing air quotes when I say rent control, because it's a rent control bill that caps rents at 7% annual increases plus CPI, which is 10.3% for this year, which is absurdly high. I don't know anyone who can afford a 10% increase in rent. And that was openly negotiated with the landlord lobby and the realtor lobby. And then we've seen a student funding package, a school funding package for K through 12 that provides an additional $2 billion per biennium to public schools, which is unfortunately only half of the necessary funds to meet the standards laid out by the quality education model from the state. So it's $2 billion short. It's also about 10 years too late. It also includes an amendment to ban local commercial activities taxes from city, county, and district governments. And that was openly negotiated with Oregon Business and Industries between Kotek and Courtney, the Speaker of the House and President of the Senate, respectively, openly negotiated with the largest business group in the state, Oregon Business and Industries, and Oregon Business and Industries openly flaunted in emails to their members that they struck this deal with Courtney and Kotek to water down the bill in exchange for not challenging on the ballot. Of course, it is still going to get challenged on the ballot anyway. Then,
funny how that works, yeah.
Now we've seen a already weak cap and trade market-based false solution to our climate crisis that has been lobbied for as the preferred climate solution by the corporate lobby for the last 40 years, get continually watered down with exemptions and handouts to big business, has now been effectively declared dead. Just today it was effectively declared dead because Republican state senators fled the state in a standoff with state police, which they threatened to shoot.
Yep.
And then teamed up with right-wing fascist militias.
Yep.
Who laid siege to the state capitol.
This she's literally true. This happened.
This is not exaggerations. This is exactly how mainstream news is reporting this. Laid siege to the state capitol, shut down the state government for 2 days, and are still AWOL. The Republican state reps, state senators are still AWOL, and now the bill has been declared dead by the Senate president, which is really a fitting culmination, a real poetic sum of what we've experienced here in Oregon this legislative session. We elected a Democratic supermajority that has so far totally disappointed. And I know that working class people in Oregon know that this isn't how it has to be, that we can do better than this, that a better world is possible. When our state reps come to our town halls and look us in the eye and say this is the best that they can do, that this is the best that's possible, we know that that's not true. We know that when working class people come together and stand with one another in solidarity, that we can win true, meaningful, transformative changes. So that's what my campaign's about. We're fighting for an Oregon Green New Deal. We're fighting for transformative campaign finance reform. We're fighting for real, meaningful housing justice. We're fighting to defend our worker and labor rights. We're fighting to defend our unions, who I forgot to mention, actually probably the biggest, most shameful act that our Democratic supermajority took this legislative session was voting to cut our public employee pensions. Our Democratic supermajority voted to cut public employee pensions in the state of Oregon by up to 12.5% at the time of retirement for Tier 2 beneficiaries. And this was a shocking betrayal of our unions done by Democrats that were elected in part by union support. So we believe that we can do better. We believe that Oregon can be better than this. We believe that we can fight for and win the progressive values that Oregonians hold. And we're going to do that, and we're going to do it together.
Sweet, excellent, well spoken. What was the process that brought you into deciding to run as a candidate? Because you are currently you are co-chair of the electoral group, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe, I think I've actually sat in on you have a presentation that was given to a couple of us about just going beyond endorsements of like why say leftist chapters like say DSA would want to go beyond just endorsing a particular character Yeah, I guess the character and candidate. Hopefully your candidate is a character, because otherwise how are you going to get traction nowadays? Could you talk about what led you to decide, what led you to be getting either deciding to or getting press ganged into being just deciding to run for office?
Yeah, well, I never imagined that I'd ever be a politician. I'd ever be running for office. It's definitely not the life I thought I'd be living.
Dirty electoralism.
Yes, for sure. If my dream job, in fact, is to be a chef. So if I wasn't a politician, I wouldn't be a chef, right? Because I'm poor. I'd probably be a line cook trying to save up money to go to culinary school at night or something. But I would want to be a chef. But anyway, I didn't really have much of a choice, right? I mean, it's just the material conditions that working class people are subjugated to under capitalism and other supporting power structures of this country really forces myself and a lot of other people to have two choices: either fight back or die. I'm a trans woman. I was born in rural North Carolina. My parents were evangelical Baptists. They were white nationalists. They were not a good place to be for a young trans woman in rural North Carolina. So I didn't really have the opportunity to have the life that a lot of other people have. My only choices were to fight back or die. So my politics, being political, is not really a choice. I'm just like a lot of other people. Probably a lot of people in this room and in DSA, we're just trying to fight for our lives here against capitalism and the cis-heteropatriarchy and white supremacy and colonialism and imperialism. And there's a lot of different ways we can do that. So that gets into why, your second part of your question, why should DSA be running our own candidates? And that is because, from our perspective, we don't want to just prop up the system. We don't want to just prop up capitalism and defend capitalism, maybe reform it. We recognize that capitalism is isn't a broken system. It's working fundamentally exactly as intended, and that the problems that we have in capitalism are part of the structure, that we don't need to fix the system. We need to build an entirely new system, a better world, and that's democratic socialism. And we can't get to that. We can't do that if all we're doing is endorsing the most progressive capitalist supporting candidate that comes our way every 2 years. If we're gonna get to that world and we're gonna build that world, then we have to start putting forward our own vision with our own candidates, and that has to come from the bottom up. That has to come from grassroots electoral organizing. It has to come from 100% people-powered campaigns with no corporate money. And we're starting to take those steps. We're doing that here in Portland. There's other DSA chapters all across the country that have been doing that, from Bernie Sanders running for president to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, down to local school board races. We just had a DSA candidate elected to school board in Corvallis here in Oregon, just in this last special election in 2019.
So that election actually happened. It's already happened. Okay.
Yeah, it was the May 2019 special election.
That one was it. Okay.
And Brandy Fortson, a DSA member in Corvallis, became the first openly non-binary person elected to public office in the country when they were elected to school board, and that I think is what our electoral struggle is really most important, is at the local level. We don't just need, we do need to elect Bernie Sanders to the presidency, but we're not going to build a better world by electing a single president. We're going to build a better world by building a movement from the grassroots, from the bottom up. And that starts with school board races, with city council races, county commissioner races, state house and state senate races, but even lower on the smaller scale, that starts with just organizing in our communities. Even outside of the electoral realm, it starts with building the socialist movement and the socialist base beyond just electoral voting, beyond just a voting base, but a true revolutionary class-conscious base that supports union organizing, that does mutual aid projects, and is organizing to spread democracy in all areas of our life, not just at the ballot box.
So sometimes our worst enemies are, folks on our side. So, other leftists might ask, what are the limitations of running socialists in what is effectively a liberal democracy?
Well, I mean, we have to understand that the system is rigged against us and not in our favor, that we have to fight twice as hard, 3 times as hard, or many times as hard as the capitalists do to get every little ounce of power that we can win in an electoral system, and that fundamentally the electoral system is not set up to allow us to transform society in the way that it needs to be transformed. So we have to recognize and acknowledge that the type of movement we need to build to succeed needs to transcend beyond the electoral realm. And in that regard, I believe that electoral politics is a tactic, not a strategy. That we're not gonna win socialism at the ballot box alone. Anyway, we're not going to vote in socialism. We're not going to vote away capitalism. But the people we vote for can help us get there by winning a platform, creating space in the discourse, by stressing the contradictions of capitalism and the liberal state. And then also, once they are elected, maybe we can't win transformative mode of production type of victories in a legislature, because if I get elected and I introduce a bill that says private property is banned in Oregon, then it's just going to get struck down by the courts, of course, right? But then we're stressing the contradictions. Then we're asking the question of why is the system this way? Why is the system set up to not allow the people to democratize their society? And that has to be done in tandem with the movement across all realms of organizing. It has to be done in tandem, especially with union building, because that's where our real power is, not at the ballot box. Our real power is in the workplaces. Our real power is in our positionality within the capitalist economy, that we make the trains run, we drive the trucks, we work the docks, we produce all commodities, all value is created by labor. So an organized class of workers can shut down the economy at will. That's where our power is. But we're not going to be able to use that power unless we're organized, and we have to do that not just at the ballot box, but also in our workplaces and in our neighborhoods and in our communities.
Great. Let's see. I always think I should write my questions down, but it's kind of a thing where I'm way too stream of consciousness to actually to ever go off of questions that I would have written down a couple hours ago. So I always kind of go off the cuff. Do you want to talk about I guess changing the race that you were you decided to contest? That's how you pronounce that word.
Sure. So there was originally talk of me potentially primarying Kathleen Taylor, the state senator in my district, because she's taken a lot of problematic positions in the past, and ultimately she's more conservative than her electorate is. And so we put the pressure on her, and we've been pressuring her for a while to reduce or eliminate the corporate campaign contributions that she's taken in, and she's scoffed and laughed at that. I met her in her office and had a conversation with her earlier in the year where we mentioned how often I'm dogging her at our town halls and et cetera on campaign finance stuff with all her corporate campaign contributions, and she laughed and mentioned that she's not going to stop taking corporate campaign money. I'm like, but you could if you wanted to.
This is Oregon, yeah.
Yeah. And then she told me that she sleeps fine at night with all the corporate campaign money she takes. So she's very much not very, very progressive, even in the very liberal mainstream sense of the word. But she took the right position on the purse vote, which is something that I was very grateful to see her do. I was very proud to see my state senator stand up to Peter Courtney and stand up for the rights of workers and defend our public employees. And I do not think we should be primarying anyone at this time when we have so few state senators that will stand up for unions. We should not be primarying them, no matter how much corporate campaign money they take, at least this year.
Right.
Maybe in a couple years when we have, but there's much more important races for us to run people in. If she is going to take that position, I'm very glad she did. I would much rather not run against her and have her take good positions than the inverse.
Right, and I should full disclosure, she is also my state senator, and as I do reside in her district, and I reside in House District 42, which is where we are sitting right now. So you were campaigning to be my state House rep. So should you win, we get to yell at you now. But what was the old line of like once the person you support wins, it's like the day after election day. It's it's your the day after they get into office is the next day. It's your job to go there and pick a fight or something like that. I can't remember how that line goes, but
yeah,
that's effectively the DSA endorsement process.
yeah.
As it should be, though. I think that's how it should be, right? Yeah. Because I mean, as friendly as you think politicians are, myself included, if we're friends, at the end of the day, I'm getting elected to represent you in office, and if I'm not going to be held accountable, then I mean, not everything else might as well be thrown out the window. We still have to hold the people that we elect accountable, and we do that by constantly keeping the pressure on them. And if that means going to town halls and yelling at them when they take bad positions, then please do come to my town halls after I'm elected and yell at me if I take a bad position. But I don't plan on it.
Stick a pin in the whole like art in yelling at your elected officials. Bryan, to bring you in,
sure.
What you are helping out with the campaign, correct?
With Paige's campaign?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. What kind of what made you decide to kind of to, I don't want to say take an active role because that sounds corporate as fuck. What was your why did you decide to pitch in? Or rather, what's a decent metaphor? Hitch your wagon, pitch in, help, join up.
What made you answer the call?
There you go. Thank you.
I mean, it wasn't really a call.
Yeah, it's usually like Jungian, Campbellian, Petersonian language. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
literally, Paige called you. That's how it works.
I'm interested in building Portland DSA, and I think one of the skills that I bring is kind of working with, like demographic data and political data and all that kind of stuff. And like I think that our campaigns really need those skills, and so I just am kind of trying to plug in where I see myself being most useful to the chapter, and. I see Paige's campaign as an engine for growth. Hopefully we elect Paige as well. But I'm really invested in growing the chapter. I also think that working with Paige a couple months before she decided to run, she not only has pretty defined politics, but she's also willing to just put in the like elbow grease type work. Sitting on the computer and doing spreadsheets and looking at the numbers and figuring out like, okay, where is the best district to target? And I really respect that kind of thoroughness.
And all the time driving that hour down to Salem.
Yeah, that too.
Yes, my back hurts from driving to Salem twice a week. I'd recommend getting one of those, even the little like cheap like seat inserts can help out a lot. Yeah, I got one of those.
Okay, good.
My back still hurts.
Oh. That's rough.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's a hard knock life. What are you going to do? If there's no back pain, it ain't socialism.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, I was wondering what, and this question is for both of you because you're effectively working together. What is your long-term vision? If, especially Paige, if part of the reason that you're running is to expand the social discourse and stress the contradictions of our current system.
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, I absolutely do intend to win. This is a very winnable race, and we intend and we will win this race. But there is a lot more that we can accomplish in addition to just winning. We can also use it to build a movement, because if we're not engaging in electoral politics in a way that deliberately uplifts the other work that is going on in the movement and builds our base beyond just the electoral sphere, then we're really just we're wasting our resources. Because, like I said, for every we have to work 3 times as hard or 4 times as hard in the electoral realm to get the same amount of power that our class enemies are able to achieve in that realm. So we need to be very deliberate in how we use our limited resources, mostly our human resources, because we don't really have any financial resources, right? We're DSA. We got no money. But anyway, we do have people, and people, we have a limited number of people. So we have to engage in our electoral process in a way that when we go out and canvass, we can add questions in our scripts from other working groups and caucuses, or maybe even other groups in the movement that are that may in the future endorse us. And we can, for example, when we go out and canvass, we can ask people at the door, are you a member of a union, or would you like to unionize your workplace? And then pass along that contact info to our labor working group, who can then contact them with information on how to unionize and support them through that process, as our labor working group has been doing across the city and supporting unions that are currently sprouting up all over Portland. There's a lot more value to be won beyond just winning, which we will do, but we can also uplift the other work we do and build the movement, because that's what this is really about, not just winning one seat in the legislature.
Right. Yeah, I'll just echo what Paige said. I think we have to see elections as just one organizing platform. Obviously there's our workplaces and there's our apartment buildings, and even just going out in public and talking to people. It's just one way that you engage with people and you politicize something and you get them to think about their politics, and try to push them into some kind of organization.
Might one idea be like, if they go after PERS again, the goal would be to have thousands of people at the Capitol. My understanding was when the final PERS vote got taken, it was only like a handful of people there to protest.
Yeah, it was only a handful, and the firefighters union showed up in pretty good force. That was really cool to see. But also it came down very quickly. They pushed through the bill very, very quickly. I believe, partly intentionally, so that we couldn't organize very effectively in opposition. State legislators, both in the House and the Senate, weren't responding to their constituents when they were getting emails and calls, and people were going down to the Capitol and then just showing up at their offices to demand a response. And so we got a little bit out of Rob Nost. We knew that he was going to vote for the cuts about 2 days before it happened, and that's when we were very, very shocked, because Rob Nost, up until that point, had been relatively progressive, relatively, right, for Oregon. He still takes a bunch of fossil fuel money, but he'd been relatively one of the more progressives in the House, and he's a staff member for Oregon Nurses Association. He works for a union, and he works for a union that represents workers who have benefits in PERS and the Public Employees Pension System. So it was pretty shocking when we found out he was going to vote for the cuts. So we tried to put pressure on him, and unfortunately, him, along with a lot of others, just totally shut us out. Wouldn't talk to us. Wouldn't put out a statement. He still hasn't put out a very clear statement as to why he voted for the cuts. So we don't like that we have to primary challenge him. We wish he would have just voted the right way. But you don't get to call yourself a progressive and then vote to cut public employee pensions, and you definitely don't get to do that and get away with it.
Yeah, you're bringing those two bits together, both about movement building, but also the kind of like having a cantankerous relationship with your elected official. One of the things that been my own personal challenges is kind of a thing of, I don't know, increasing personal radicalization, I guess you could call it, is how do you communicate to folks to, because we are emerging from a long period, decades of popular like depoliticization and demobilization. Like, how do you communicate to folk, like I said, well-intentioned, well-intentioned, good-hearted, kind of Portland, otherwise, progressive folks and beyond, that the whole point is, yes, it's great to, it's great to vote somebody quote unquote good in, but that you have to, now that they're in, you kind of, that's where the movement comes in. Like, you have to force them to move. You actually have to force them to do shit. And it's it's one of the things that I've noted that, I don't know if this is just, my extremely online adult brain, but a lot of times I've just see a lot of takes and a lot of content, a lot of just bad culture of folks who seem to be personally, I think because they are personally conflict averse, not willing to be politically, not wanting to bring a political conflict in. And I was wondering if Paige and Bryan, if the two of you could talk about that, about like how do you actually communicate to people? Like, yeah, it's great that you knock doors and campaign and called for this great candidate, but like now they're in, if you're lucky, how do you force them to do shit?
I don't think it's that hard, really. But I think it's important that we do try to reach people through the electoral process, because that's where a lot of the American working class is at right now.
Right.
When they think about politics, they think about voting in elections. They don't necessarily think about politics being in their workplace and when they go to pay their rent to their landlord, or in their patriarchal family structures that they are raised in. And anyway, so we need to go and meet them where they're at, which is electoralism. And then while we have them there, while we have their attention, show them all the other arenas that their class enemies are engaging in and fighting in and winning in. And if we don't go there and show up and fight in those arenas, then the capitalist class, the 1%, the wealthy, the corporations, or all of our class enemies, the landlords, the cops, are going to keep winning. And I don't think it's, once you get in front of an average Oregonian, I mean, that's not too difficult of a gap to bridge. Working class people don't need to be told that they're oppressed. They don't need to be told that their rent's too high. They don't need to be told that they struggle to maintain health insurance. They don't need to be told that they have hundreds of $1,000s in student loans. They just need to be told that a better world is possible, that it doesn't have to be this way, that we can not only reimagine a better world, but together we can build it.
Yeah, and to bring that to the next step, we have to show them that we can win. Like we can fight for things that we believe in, and we can win, and then move on to the next fight. This is building a movement is it's, I'm trying to think of the right mathematical term, exponential like growth process where everything is building on itself. You need to start small enough that you can make some wins and have people feel that they got something out of their labor that they put into this movement. And then, you use the next stage to stress the contradictions that we need more. It's a lot of just stream of consciousness, but welcome to podcasting.
Welcome to podcasting. Yeah. Candy, do you have anything, or do you have a question, or a next, or a continuation, if you will?
Well, I was just going to say that. So I compared this in my mind with strikes, right? Because that's where I go automatically. And so there are limitations of a strike, just like there are limitations of, like I said, running as a socialist in a liberal democracy, in that if you really want revolution, you would have to demand things that the state couldn't possibly provide, right? Because strikes, at least now, the way that they function, you're only asking for things that that the employer can provide, right? So a raise, or there's social justice issues and social justice organizing, that type of thing. And so it's limited in that sense, right? And so that's the analogy that I see, running for office versus building a movement. Is that running for office, you're operating within a really strict framework. Whereas building a movement, you're saying, no, we want more than what that framework could possibly offer. I don't know if that helped. It's just the way, that's just another way of thinking about it.
Right. Yeah. And then it just gets to the question of like, okay, then like, yeah, how do you build that movement and what tactics do you use? And, as Paige said, an electoral campaign is just one tool in the toolbox. It's a place that, a lot of people pay attention to, and it's what our conception of politics is that is beaten into our heads in history class. We need to expand the sphere of politics so that people see it occurring in their workplaces and elsewhere. I think one role that an elected official can take is to take the boot off the neck of like organizing in other spheres. To side with unions when they're contesting something in the legislature. If we had Paige in the legislature, perhaps she could have warned people earlier that this PERS vote was coming down the pipe, and there would have been more time to organize. I don't know, but
On that point, taking the boot off the neck of not just organizers, but also just in general the working class, there's a lot of very real material wins that we can achieve in the electoral arena, in the legislative process, that maybe aren't abolishing capitalism, but are material gains that'll have real meaningful impact on people's lives. Especially when we, if we're not going to go out and show up and fight for especially marginalized communities, then how are we going to go to them and ask them to show up for us? I mean, for example, I'm trans, so in Oregon, trans women are housed in men's jails and prisons. So if I'm arrested by a cop, not even charged with anything, just captured by a cop, I can be thrown into a men's jail where I'll likely be beaten and raped and spend long periods of time in solitary confinement without ever being charged with the crime necessarily. And that's perfectly legal here in Oregon. That's something that we definitely can change in the state legislature. In the state legislature right now, we have a driver's license for all bill that removes the citizenship requirement, proof of citizenship requirement to obtain a driver's license. That's something that can have real meaningful impact on people's lives. So if we're not going to show up for communities that are extremely impacted by the wins and losses in our state legislature, and we're not going to show up and fight for them, then we certainly can't ask them to come to our reading groups or to our socialist cinema club or whatever nonsense that we want them to come to while working class people are out there fighting for their lives. Sorry, reading clubs are not nonsense.
No, Jeremy, write down socialist cinema club. That's actually really good.
I've never heard that formulation before. That's really good. But
update from the New York City Beltway. 1 point difference, less than 1,000 votes, 87% reporting for Caban.
Oh yeah, Caban's winning by 1%. 87% reporting though. It's too early.
Yeah.
Too early to call.
It's gonna be a long night out there. And Candy had to silently leave us in the interim. Grow up in west of Charlotte. How did you wind up in Oregon? Or like what was the long winding trail that led you to Oregon?
Really, when I say that I had to choose between fighting back or dying, I do really mean that literally. Trans people have really incredibly high suicide rates. And, being born in the situation I was born in, I was no exception to that statistic. The first time I tried to kill myself, I was 9 years old. And the last time I tried to kill myself, I tried to kill myself twice, I was about 11. And then after that, I decided, the reason I failed was because a 9-year-old doesn't know enough about how my body works to be able to kill myself. Anyway, but I decided that I was going to fight back, and I made a plan. So sometime around 11 or 12 years old, I looked out in the world, and I decided that the only way to escape this situation, I knew I had to escape. I knew I had to leave, most definitely my family, but also just North Carolina and in that area in general. And the only way out of Gaston County, North Carolina is the military. So unfortunately, I decided to join the U.S. Army. So I joined the Army at 17. Any
particular reason why the Army, or just kind of like this is what you decided on?
I don't really remember. I think I wanted, it was probably a choice between the Army and the Marine Corps. I wanted some kind of combat job, because it had the shortest contract length. It would have got me out of there the quickest. And I don't know, I was probably also a little bit suicidal still at the time too. So I was kind of hoping that maybe, I could, it'd be real convenient if I got killed in some war. But, anyway, so I joined the Army. I joined as an infantryman. Went to basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia, which was, not fun, but, what are you going to do if you gotta
basic training in Georgia? Yeah.
If you want to export U.S. imperialism, you gotta go down to Georgia and sweat a little bit. So I don't think anyone should, Anyway, so Fort Benning, Georgia, basic training, whatever. Then I went to Fort Carson, Colorado, where I was stationed. I was part of the 4th Infantry Division. in a armored unit. I was a mortarman, which is a type of infantryman that's just an infantryman that's qualified on mortars. So I was in a heavy mortar platoon, a 120 millimeter armored mortar platoon in an armored unit, so a tank unit. I did the whole U.S. imperialism thing, which was not good, right? I deployed once to Kuwait and Qatar. It was a non-combat deployment, but I really most of the time I guarded a gate on a base in Qatar, in Doha, Qatar, Camp Asalea. Yes, I believe I'm remembering that correctly. Camp Asalea. I guarded a gate there. But even though it was a non-combat deployment, I very much was still heavily enforcing U.S. imperialism, because the Qatar is absolutely a white Western European imperialist, almost like mini colony, because of the World Cup that's coming there in 2022, I believe. Right? Anyone?
Yeah, I was saying, I can't even remember, because of what they primarily function on, like imported workers from South Asia, isn't it?
Right. So they were building stadiums for the World Cup when I was there. I was there in 2015. And they were starting to build stadiums, or I guess they had been for a while, and they're effectively using slave labor to do so. And their entire economy runs on this slave labor, and their economy runs on imported capital. So, imperialism is not just dropping bombs and invading countries; it's also the exportation of capital. There's a book, if y'all want to read about that, The Highest Stage of Capitalism, Imperialism, The Highest Stage of Capitalism. Some guy a long time ago wrote it. He's pretty cool. You should check him out.
He liked cats. I think he had facial hair.
Yeah, I don't remember his name. I don't know.
Lived in London for a while.
Anyway, so that theory of imperialism being the highest stage of capitalism is Qatar's a very good example of that, because a lot of these stadiums were being built by Western-owned companies with imported labor from Pakistan, India, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and Oman, and these workers, when they arrive in country, they have their passports confiscated, and then they're forced to sign contracts, supposedly to get their passports back at the end of it. Often these contracts are not upheld. Of course, they often don't ever see their passport again, so they're often forced to stay in the country and work for slave-like wages in terrible conditions. I remember I was there during Ramadan, where the workers weren't allowed to drink water or eat during the day, but they were still expected to work 12 hours in construction during the middle of the summer in Qatar, when it was 125 degrees with 80% humidity. So they died a lot. There was just dead workers every day, all over the place. Well, I mean, not like all over the place, not like crowding the streets, but like multiple workers a day would be dying in Doha.
Because I'm remembering also here, it just reminded me of because this has been, like I said, you were there in 2015, so this thing has been going on for years now. Because I can also remember the stories of when they were setting up for the Olympics in, of all places, Brazil, and I think there were, just the amount of it kind of like signaled the way Brazil was going to go. Sorry for interruption. Please continue.
So my role there was my role in this. I was the way I describe it is effectively as a slave guard, because I wasn't there to literally stop any of these workers from leaving if they wanted to, but we were the only U.S. military base in the country. Actually, I don't think that's true. I think there's some Navy presence there. Anyway, we were the only U.S. Army base in the country.
Army, yeah.
That doesn't matter at all. Sorry, but
details.
Anyway, we were the most potent physical manifestation of U.S. imperialism in the country. We were, and if the workers in that country wanted to organize and win their freedom and fight back against their oppressors, then that base, Camp Asalea, would have been the place to do it. And the people there that would stop them, that would be the violence, that would put down any kind of liberation movement in that country, would have been me. So that was my role there. Even though it wasn't a combat deployment, it was a pretty, relatively as what we would call it, a relaxed deployment that was in a pretty comfortable spot.
Still surrounded by death, yeah.
Yeah, and I very much still was very violently upholding an international system of oppression. So that radicalized me pretty immediately. And that's effectively how I became a socialist. Because when I joined the Army, I didn't really think much beyond myself. I was suffering so much in North Carolina that I didn't really take the time to think about what joining the Army even means. What that could do to other people. So effectively, I became a middle bully. Right, the oppression of the cis heteropatriarchy forced me into a role where I became the oppressor for imperialism, and that's how those two power structures interact and uphold one another and defend one another and fuel one another. Because none of these power structures exist in a vacuum. They all interact and support one another. That's when I got back from that deployment, I very quickly became a socialist, and I started acting like one, even though I was still in the military. So around that time, President Obama lifted the ban on trans-military service and open trans-military service. So I was allowed to, stop pretending to be a man and access healthcare, and so I did. And then I also, towards the end of it, when Trump was elected, he kind of winded back some of the policies that Obama put in place. Life for trans service members got really bad really quickly. I remember I was not allowed to live in the barracks. That was actually an Obama policy. The Obama Defense Department, their original policy kind of had an oversight where trans people weren't allowed to live in the barracks, but we also weren't allowed to have off-base housing allowances that they normally give for people who don't live in the barracks.
So you just have to live in a tent or something, or?
Yeah, so I was homeless. I was homeless for a while on active duty. I lived in my car, and I slept in the parking lot of my battalion's parking lot at night. And I didn't tell anybody, of course, because I knew that my command would probably that makes them look very bad to have a homeless soldier. So they would probably try to force me into the barracks against the policy, which I actually didn't want, because they would force me into the men's barracks, where I was already at this point getting a lot of death and rape threats pretty daily. So I obviously didn't want to be there. And it was so bad, the amount of hatred and threats of violence my way, that I carried a gun every day at work. I concealed carried a gun every day when I went into work, which is very illegal on an Army base to have a firearm. But I figured I was going to get murdered. And if I'm going to get murdered, I'm going to take somebody with me.
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
But anyway, that never did happen. Ultimately, things got real bad. They got worse and worse because, Trump kind of went down that whole spiral of, attacking trans people. And then at a certain point, I was like, all right, I'm already a socialist. I already know this whole imperialism thing's crappy, and they don't even treat me good anyway. So why am I even pretending to, maintain this? Why am I trying to keep my head down and be, because at that point I was just trying to keep my head down and make it to my end of service, make it to my discharge, get an honorable discharge, and then go off and do my own thing. But, if I'm going to get, murdered at work one of these days, I might as well, stop supporting this war machine. So
die on your feet.
So I started protesting in protest of the treatment of trans service members, as well as just imperialism in general. I just started refusing every order I was given. I stopped working. I stopped wearing my flag on my uniform because I just couldn't stand to carry it around on my right shoulder anymore. And of course that's not tolerated. I didn't last very long doing that, of course. Every time an NCO would tell me to do something, or an officer would tell me to do something, I just tell them to go fuck themselves, which of course doesn't last very long in the Army. So I got into the situation where it was time to either kick me out, give me a dishonorable discharge, maybe even court-martial me, or Article 15, which is effectively the Army's version of a plea deal, which is more likely what I would get instead of just going to a trial. And I probably wouldn't have gone to jail or faced any prison time over it. But maybe I could have, but I don't really know. I'm not a lawyer. But I more than likely would have just gotten a dishonorable discharge. But anyway, coming in to save me was the white supremacist justice system in the Army. So the Army, just like the white supremacist legal system out here, it's even 10 times more racist in the Army. And the Army has all these loopholes and ways that they can give good soldiers, and I'm saying good in air quotes because it's really code word for white soldiers, a way out of these types of charges. And that way out is the Army like mental health detainment system. They have this type of system where if you're considered a threat to yourself or others in a criminal way, for example, if you beat your wife or you beat your kids, but you're otherwise a good soldier, in air quotes again, good soldier, and they want to retain you, then your company commander, has the authority to commit you to a mental health detainment facility, which is kind of like a cross between a psych ward and a low security prison. And anyway, that's what my company commander did for me, because we deployed together when he was a lieutenant, when he was like a second lieutenant. So soldiers deploying together or whatever. He thought he owed me something or something. He thought he was going to look out for me. So he threw me this bone, and I went to this mental health detainment facility. It was pretty chill. I had a cell and I was locked in there and I couldn't leave, and there was armed guards. But I played basketball and poker all day and I ate pretty good food, so it was pretty chill. And I stayed in there for 2 months, and then my contract ran out and I got an honorable discharge. And that whole system is pretty much used as a way to as a pillar of white supremacy in the military. There wasn't any people of color in there with me. Actually, there was one person who was in there, but he ended up getting discharged anyway. Actually, after a couple of days. But out of the 20 or 30 people in there with me, it was all white people, all white soldiers. And there's, if you want to Google it, there's data to support that about how U.S. Army sentencing targets and is much harsher on people of color than it is on white soldiers. And one of the ways that they get white soldiers out of crimes is like that. And everyone in there was not there because they were suicidal or they were, gonna murder somebody. Everyone that was in there, barring one person who thought he was Jesus, was in there because they committed some kind of crime and their unit wanted to retain them. There was someone that got drunk and fought some MPs. There was someone who, threw something at his wife. There was someone who cussed out one officer. So anyway, it's a system to retain good soldiers, in air quotes again, that otherwise commit some type of violation of UCMJ, which is military law.
It's kind of like a weird form of rehab or something, or just a weird stasis thing that they can do for PR reasons,
So that's what got me out. And at that point, I didn't care, right? I wasn't I didn't care if I was going to get this honorable discharge. I was just done. I was done playing the game. I didn't really care what happened to me. So, but I did get an honorable discharge because of that. After about 2 months in there, my contract ran out and I got an honorable discharge. So then I was, all of a sudden I was a civilian. I went from being in what was effectively kind of like a low security prison to the next day being on the street. And I had everything I owned in my 1996 Saab 900S. Yes, Saab 900S. Yeah. My little $1,000 beater I had. And I had nowhere to go. I had no family. I had a little bit of money. And what I did have was a GI Bill. And the GI Bill is kind of what you do when you get out of the Army, because it pays you a housing allowance, the same housing allowance that I didn't get when I was not allowed to live in the barracks. It's basic allowance for housing. It's a cost of living adjusted by area housing allowance. So I had to apply for colleges. It was kind of late in the year. There was only 3 or 4 colleges in the country that were still accepting applications. One of them was Oregon State University, and that was the best out of the bunch. So I applied on my laptop in a McDonald's, and then I got in my car and I drove to Oregon. And I got into the university very shortly after, and I got an apartment and I went to Oregon State University. And that's how I got here. So yeah, at Oregon State University, I studied political science. I organized with the DSA chapter there. That's how I got into DSA. The DSA chapter sprouted up while I was there, and they were very successful. So I went to where the people was. I was trying to organize, trying to be a good socialist, trying to get organized with other working class people, and DSA was where the working class people was at. So I went to this newly formed DSA chapter, where I initially I founded and co-chaired the Anti-Imperialist Working Group, and then I served as the chapter treasurer, and then eventually the chapter co-chair, and then After attending Oregon State University, I moved to Portland, where I came up here, and I became chair of the Electoral Working Group, and I ran our DSA little legislative advocacy team, which is basically just lobbyists without any money, so we're not very good lobbyists. And that's kind of how I got here today. That's how I made it here.
Actually, that's a hell of a story.
Sure is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sorry if that got a little dark there.
No, this is fine.
Like,
this is,
yeah.
Please, that's the thing. At some point, I mean, I did want, it's because because I always have, it's the fun thing about having effectively being a one-man operation with this thing is, I can come up with a topic and just do it. One of the, I was thinking of everything from either DSA vets or even just trans vets, because I was wondering, do you want to talk at all? Or do you want, is it just a whole other, episode topic about, I want to say it's almost the utility of just the fact the military is there, and it is, in some case, if you're a queer or trans kid somewhere, it's it is almost literally the only way out is fuck it, I guess I'll go join the Navy or something. Would you want to talk about that at all, or is that something for a whole other episode?
Sure, maybe just briefly. So trans people serve in the U.S. military at twice the rate of cis people. And the reason for that, isn't because trans people are super patriotic and love America and all the great rights that we don't have here. It's because we don't have anywhere else to go. We get kicked out of our houses as children. 1 in 3 trans people have been homeless in their lifetimes. We're 3 times as likely to be impoverished as cis people. We're 3 times as likely to be unemployed as cis people. So the military is, just to a lot of people, a social safety net. And it's unfortunate that a lot of trans people like myself don't understand or acknowledge the problematic implications that come when you join an imperialist organization, that now you become that middle bully. Now you become, you're forced into this by the cis heteropatriarchy, or other power structures, capitalism, etc. And then now you're upholding imperialism. So it's how they get you. It's how imperialism and capitalism, the cis heteropatriarchy work together to uphold one another. That's why we can't dismantle one without dismantling all of them.
Right. All right. Let's take a quick break. On a slightly lighter note, and we're back because this also ties into, I guess, both things that Paige, you and Bryan have mentioned before, in terms of movement building, but also electoralism, because of that same primary vote in 11 months. It's 11 months, isn't it? Oregon primaries are mid-May, are they not?
May 19th, 2020, so less than 11 months.
Yeah, less than 11 months. We're going to have both the Democratic state House seat, but also the Democratic presidential candidate. And so I was wondering if, as a final topic, can y'all talk about the utility and the movement building potential / not even already ingoing of that the Bernie campaign. Well, I mean, not so much just the guy, but just the campaign himself. The campaign as a thing can just talk about the utility of having that as a phenomenon.
Do you want me to start?
Sure.
I mean, I wish I had my bullet points in front of me, but I think there's a lot of different cases to be made for Bernie's campaign on its own, and then DSA's engagement in Bernie's campaign, which I think are kind of 2 different questions. But
I think just, if nothing else, it's just something of just the utility of the mass spectacle that is a presidential campaign for
Well, I think we just have to accept that billions of dollars will be lit on fire in this presidential campaign. And it is an unmatched spectacle in terms of all different types of media across the planet. It is an opportunity to bring whatever politics people want into the American consciousness in a way that is, I think, a pretty kind of unmatched megaphone. I think, Bernie, as a candidate, he, grew up in political organizing and was politicized at a young age as a socialist. I think his politics have evolved over the years as he's been in Congress for between 20 and 30 years now.
20 odd, yeah.
And, I think there's this tension inside the left about, and actually among liberals too, especially related to the FDR references in the last speech he gave 2 weeks ago. Just talking about, that's not democratic socialism, that's New Deal liberalism that Bernie is advocating for. I think we need to see the value of a candidate who, even though he is, supporting policies that are like New Deal liberalism, which, by the way, we never achieved, it brings the word democratic socialism in touch with so many more people and just gets so many more people to wonder about what it is and to shed some of the Cold War kind of associations. I think Comrade Eli said last night, probably a more succinct way to put it is, Bernie Sanders is a gateway drug for socialists and people with developing socialist politics. I think his campaign just is a organizing platform for politicizing people around democratic socialism and what socialism means in America. I know that was pretty rambly, so if you have more pointed questions.
And fighting about it pedantically online, because why not?
Yeah. That's what leftists do best.
Paige?
So I think in Oregon, I think socialist organizers in the left and DSA should relate to the Bernie campaign dependent on the material conditions of their communities. Here in Oregon and in Portland, I think we need Bernie more than Bernie needs us. Bernie's going to win Oregon almost certainly. I mean, he's going to have to, of course, him and his campaign are going to have to put in the work as usual, but they're expected to win Oregon. They won Oregon by a large margin in 2016.
Rachel and I were at that very first Moda Center rally, summer 2015. I think when he was doing like little test runs, and we stood in line and they fucking filled that place.
Yeah. Nice. So, what is our role as DSA in Portland, Oregon, to the Bernie campaign? It's not necessarily to help him win, but we can use his campaign to build a movement. Because, like I said, the American working class, where they're at, is they think politics happens at the ballot box, and most of them think it only happens every 4 years when they vote for a president. And if we can take what they like about Bernie and say, hey, do you like Medicare for all? What if I told you how cool unions are? What if I told you, we like Medicare for all too. Come join us, when we come out here. Come join us for the Medicare for all and stay for the anti-fascist rallies, Come join us for the free college for all, and stay for the, union salting, the workplace salting. That's a great opportunity for us to meet the American working class where they're at and to go and not just support Bernie, but build that movement and use it as a way to, connect our community with, the rest of, communities that maybe we don't reach, communities that, that are on the geographic peripheral of the Portland metro area, because a lot of Portland DSA is just really in southeast Portland, inner East Portland area. But the Bernie campaign, of course, is going to be campaigning all across Portland. So we're going to get to put ourselves in front of people who we haven't been in front of before. So that's what excites me about the Bernie campaign. I am excited about Bernie and Medicare for all and college for all, but also, and what I think more importantly, I'm excited about the movement building, because Bernie is a movement candidate.
Right.
He's the only one who has, just like a different theory of change outside of the electoral system that we all know and love. I think to touch on something Paige said, and something I've been thinking about a lot lately, is, we really need to create as many on-ramps as possible to the movement, if we want to grow, especially if we want to grow fast, which I think at this point is like necessary given the time limits we're operating under. I think in the next 10 years, you're going to see the right begin to use climate change as an organizing tool for their ends. And
yeah, eco-fascism is coming if it's not here already.
Yeah. So we need to organize, and we need to organize fast. And so I think we need to
scale.
Yeah, and use as many on-ramps as are available.
And to his credit, like I said, he would mentioned before, it's interacting with the all the union action going on and getting invited to the Walmart shareholder. Actually, did they film that when he went to Walmart?
Yeah, I saw it online.
Okay,
yeah.
I really need to watch that.
It's pretty standard Bernie.
Okay.
It was like a 3-minute video, but it's fun to watch.
Presidential candidate Bernie Sanders making some remarks at the Walmart shareholder meeting. Let's listen in.
And let me thank Walmart employee Kat Davis for introducing this resolution. And it states, and I quote, "Resolved, shareholders of Walmart urge the board to adopt a policy of promoting significant representation of employee perspectives among corporate decision makers by requiring that the initial list of candidates from which new nominees are chosen by the Nominating and Governance Committee include hourly associates. The policy should provide that any third-party consultant asked to furnish an initial list will be requested to include such candidates." End of quote, end of resolution. Madam Chair, the issue that we are dealing with today is pretty simple. Walmart is the largest private employer in America and is owned by the Walton family, the wealthiest family in the United States, worth approximately $175 billion. And yet, despite the incredible wealth of its owner, Walmart pays many of its employees starvation wages, wages that are so low that many of these employees are forced to rely on government programs like food stamps, Medicaid, and public housing in order to survive.
Can I jump in and mention something briefly?
So, sure. Everybody say hello to Bryan. Bryan, I think he's been listening in quiet, intently off mic. Bryan, please add your thoughts.
Bryan Denning, Portland DSA member. I just want to mention the Bernie campaign, and one thing that I think is useful about that for the DSA, and just useful as a example, not only for what we can be doing, but what politicians can be doing in general on the electoral stage, is Bernie's been organizing workers at every stage as he's going along in his campaign, and he's been going to places like Walmart, going to Amazon, going to Disney, going to some of the largest employers. So, for example, Walmart is the largest employer of people of color in the United States, and a lot of people working at Amazon, look at these places, are often women and minorities who are struggling to get through every day and at their workplace. So it's not like people talk about electability, or they talk about Bernie bros, or they talk about how identity politics is a huge issue to work around, and how do you bridge that gap. I think you bridge that gap through connecting to everybody in their workplace and pulling them in and saying it's about you getting what you need also, and not just about one group of people. And I think that's a huge message that he's pushing forward. And I think it's something that we're going to be doing here as well, is reaching out to all these communities, reaching out to everyone, and saying we want to know what's important to you and how we make that happen for you and for us together, all of us together, to get a better world. So it's not just minor things. I really appreciate the fact that he's focusing on unionizing, focusing on getting things done, focusing on all those things that are important for workers here in the United States right now. So, my 2 cents.
Excellent. One brief moment. Oh, nope, I was going to say, Candy will be so jealous. Anyway, that's Leo. He complains a lot. And then one moment, I need to put him either outside or in the other room. Because otherwise he will meow on the mic.
Still 0.7% lead for Caban.
0.7, but it shifted up.
Yeah, it's at 95 now. 95% of precincts reporting.
Whew, this is a nail biter.
Yeah, it's going to be too close to call tonight. I don't think we're going to have a live react.
And we're back. If you've ever seen Kentucky Fried Movie, it's a joke from that. The closest thing we have to running to an actual formal segment on this show is recommendations and endorsements. If there's anything you've been digging on lately that you would like to recommend to the viewing audience.
You want me to go first?
Go for it.
Okay. Today, for the first time, I tried out these cool electric scooters around Portland, and I'm a little bit ashamed to admit that I had a lot of fun on this electric scooter.
The scoots. I'm
not going to name any brands because we're democratic socialists here. We don't want to pump up any brands and give corporations money. But
at least not for free.
These electric scooters are a lot of fun. I've never ridden a scooter or a skateboard in my life, so I didn't know what I was doing. I jumped on one of these electric scooters for the first time, and it was very scary. I was very scared. I didn't have a helmet on. That's against the law. I probably shouldn't have admitted that.
No, it's a scooter in this town.
Yes.
No one wears. That's the thing.
Ted Wheeler is going to come after me now. After he listens to this podcast, he's gonna. Yep, I didn't wear a helmet, Ted Wheeler. What are you going to do about it?
Just direct message him that. Yeah,
I'm just kidding. I definitely shouldn't have said that. Yeah, he's got cops.
This is true.
But anyway, so yes, it was very fun. A little bit scary. 15 miles an hour feels real fast to me anyway. And I'm real into it. I'm real into it. But I don't want to name any brands because we don't like to promote brands.
But just the if you're listening to this in a major, probably whatnot, these things have to have shown up in like the UK and Europe by now.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, okay. It's to say, so if you live in a somewhat major city, you've probably seen the scoots around, and as always, folks, if you're going to pitch them into large bodies of water, please do the earth a solid and strip out the batteries. Also, you shouldn't throw them into large bodies of water.
If you want to take direct action, if you want to take direct action against these companies, which I support direct action against corporations, throw them in recycling bins, not the river, and take the batteries out first.
Right.
Good point. Recommendation, yeah. So I'm, the one I had in my head is defying this whole not using brands principle.
Oh no.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
No, go for it.
Okay.
I'm going to judge you.
I mentioned
okay.
you. I mean, we talk about Netflix shows on here. It's just like, yeah.
Yeah. This is gonna sound dorky, but I've been really digging on Airtable lately. I was skeptical at first, but it's
no. You're right. That was dorky as fuck.
You made me feel so much better about the e-scooters. I felt lame as shit talking about e-scooters, but you're literally talking about spreadsheets up in here.
Yeah,
spreadsheets.
I'm very impressed with this software. It's great.
That's okay. I am.
It's a great organizing tool.
Yeah, I mean, it's not socialism if there's no spreadsheets, and the more spreadsheets there are, the more socialist it is. I mean, this is known. I mean, Karl Marx probably said that.
Yeah.
And doodle polls.
Yeah.
I will go. The thing I've been actually enjoying most of are two recently released video games. One is called Outer Wilds, or The Outer Wilds. I can't remember what the actual thing is. It is a strange and very not so twee, but it's very a nice little handcrafted kind of small little almost indie team where you play not quite a spacefaring race. It's more of a thing of it. You are exploring your little solar system. And seeing what the progenitors who were there before you, what they actually left, and you're kind of it's effectively it is a game about xeno-architecture, not xeno-architecture. Mountains of Madness is about xeno-architecture. No, this is much more about xeno-archaeology, about discovering and learning about past civilizations as you kind of fly around in your little lunar lander, handcrafted, wood-paneled spaceship. It is very cute. It is very short, and there's a lot more time looping involved than you would expect. The other thing I've been digging on a lot is, for those of you who were big fans of certain Castlevania games, one of the main creators, a guy named Yoji Igarashi, I believe hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, has finally put out a game that was kickstarted. It was effectively a new version of his classic, what they call Metroidvania games, of a new version of Symphony of the Night and all those great Castlevania handheld games. The game was called Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, or something like that. I think it's like that. I can't remember. It's effectively, it's that kind of a thing. Instead of, it's to the point where they even use the same lettering as they did last time, only with one or two things off. But it's effective. It's a full on Metroid video game. You collect a lot of things. You fight a lot of monsters. A lot of the voice acting is deliberately over the top. It is, There's far more cat content in there than I expected, in that you fight, there's at least one demon cat and one demon puppy, in terms of like literally a monster is like this huge puppy head that barks after you and chases you around the screen. And also, because it's a Kickstarter game, one of the Kickstarter tiers, people could put enough money into it and get their own kind of like they would get their own portrait, like a custom portrait in the game, because it takes place in this castle, and the fine portraiture on the wall that they used for backers. Someone paid enough, but the portrait they submitted was of their tuxedo cat. So you have like this nice little like wall portrait of this tuxedo cat in Victorian finery. So yeah, that's it's a lot of fun. All right, plugs. Where can folks find you? Do you have what upcoming events do you want to tell people about?
If you are involved in Portland DSA already, or are considering getting involved in Portland DSA, we're gearing up for several campaigns, including Paige's in Oregon House District 42, in the heart of Southeast Portland, as well as the Universal Preschool Now campaign, which is a ballot measure that's going to go to the ballot in Multnomah County to raise the top marginal tax rate enough to create universal preschool for kids under
starting at age 4. Just at age 4, but then expanding beyond that to younger as well in future years, but starting with age 4.
Starting with age 4 in Multnomah County. So that's really exciting. And then on July 14th at the Portland DSA General Meeting, we'll be voting on a potential Bernie campaign plan. And so that's also really exciting. So if you're interested in getting involved in any of that stuff, we'll be having a general meeting on the 14th, and let's look on our Twitter or on our website. There's lots of ways to get involved.
Excellent, thank you. Paige, do you have any particular dates or things, ways that folks can get a hold of you?
Sure. Our campaign, you can find more about it on our website, paige2020.com. That's PAIGE, Papa Alpha India Golf Echo 2020.com.
I keep forgetting that G is golf.
And if you would like to donate, you can do so on there as well. We're up against a lot of corporate money. My opponent is funded by the fossil fuel industry. He's funded by Nike. He's funded by Realtor and Landlord Lobby.
All the hits. And
we're going to get outspended by a large margin because I am running a 100% people-powered campaign with no corporate money, powered by small individual donors. So you can find a donation link at paige2020.com. No donation's too small. Every little bit helps and is very, very greatly appreciated.
Yeah, and outside of donating, we're going to be building a canvas operation. So even if you don't have money, if you have some time you want to give us to help knock on doors of our neighbors, talk about socialism and talk about Paige's vision for the state of Oregon, we'll be gearing up this summer, going into the fall and next spring. So.
There's a volunteer form on the website as well.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm helping out with is you've heard of free brake light clinics happening elsewhere in the country, put on by DSA chapters and other affiliated groups. We are having one of these in Portland. It is going to happen the first Saturday of July, which means I need to really get this goddamn episode out in time. It is we're going to have a free brake light clinic at the first Saturday in July 6th, from 11 to 4 at the corner of Northeast MLK and Alberta. It's going to be at the Open House co-working space at 5020 Northeast MLK. It's one of those things where, we want, it's kind of a thing where folks got a busted taillight, just pull up, get changed for free by, I think I'm actually going to be working on, I think I'm going to be, a couple of us here, Bryan and I are going to be both there, either helping with logistics or actually helping with repairs. But it's one of those projects where kind of like mutual aid of making sure, us helping each other. And I'm really bad at mutual aid talk. I'm not an anarchist.
It's a good buzzword. You hit him. The anarchist will like that you said it.
Yeah, mutually, us helping ourselves and reducing interactions between marginalized populations in Portland and our lovely police department. And so that is one of them. Again, that's a free brake light clinic going on at Saturday, July 6th, from 11 to 4, corner in Northeast Portland, corner of MLK and Alberta. There's the Maryland Buck abolitionist coalition collective. I can't remember what the last order. They have also put some on, and they're going to be putting some more on too. Hopefully, we will be able to strike up a working relationship where I think between DSA and them we'll be able to take turns like alternating on months putting these on to kind of like at different places around Portland to help out a lot of folks. So hopefully that'll work on.
Can I just say I'm sorry to anarchists that I made a joke about mutual aid? I didn't mean it. I love mutual aid.
No, it's okay. It's half this. I mean, that's the fun thing about I'm not only the host. I'm editing this, which means I can go back and trim out all of my my more egregious fuck ups.
Oh, it's okay. You can leave it in.
Yeah,
it was
true.
A good joke.
That's true. Yeah,
but I just want to make clear that I don't mean an anarchist. I love y'all.
Indeed. That's pretty much it. They gave contact info. Let's see. Okay, once again, if you would like to, I guess, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for good Korean places around Portland to eat, you want to get a hold of us here at the show. The email is givingthemic@gmail.com. We do have a Patreon, so if you would like to donate and help us make this thing, you can help us for as little as $1 a month. And if you subscribe, $3 a month, you can get access to you can get early released episodes. We've released a couple things. It's pretty much because a lot of times I will put out an episode in parts. If you want to hear the whole thing all at once, subscribe to there. I'm a horrible pitching. What can I say? Find us on Facebook, like, subscribe, and share, and all that stuff at facebook.com/givingthemic. I am out of things to say. Last words, anybody?
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me, Jerry.
Good night, folks. Would someone do me a favor and let this idiot cat out? Otherwise, he will meow repeatedly. And like I said, it is not a true leftist podcast unless you hear a cat meowing in the background and the host has a slight speech impediment. So we qualify for both of those.
Oh, okay. So it can't go to a runoff according to this. So whoever wins wins.
All right.
Plurality.
Waited on bated breath. Let's see.
Sorry, this is
no.
It's good content.
Oh shit. 49% reporting, and it's within 0.6%.
Oh boy. All right. Basic format. I was thinking it's about 6:15 right now.
Just breathed really loud into the mic.
Yep.
I think we're gonna have to do a live react to the Qatar election results on this show.
If you like the compelling content. But the overall format is, it's a standard, broadcast, podcast, interactions, do introduction, go around. I think the basic format was, it's like Paige talked to you for like I said, 20 odd minutes, and then you can either hang out and join us for the rest, or take off if you like. And then we're also going to talk to Bryan too about, part of it is like I guess everybody can kick in too, but it's just kind of like why would why would you actually want to run an electoral candidate in that kind of a thing?
Just want to go on the record that Paige is much more well qualified to answer this than I am, but I'm happy to go off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we wanted you here as a surrogate, so it's not me saying some of these things.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah. So
but yeah, like I said, this is like we're a hyper. Like I said, really hyper formal here.
What do we got here?
I think I will actually just stay for the whole thing. I don't.
Cool.
I have time. I didn't expect to have time, but I do.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, it is. And know if you had time or not, but I have some like rough idea for questions or anything. But it's one of these things where it's I don't know if we don't really have hard and fast topics so much as we have beginning vectors and just kind of wander our way towards hopefully something interesting.
I like the use of the word vector.
I took more, an engineer who took more, an aerospace engineering student who took more than a few math classes, so it's
okay.
Some of the terms hung around.
I respect that. I was also an engineering student.
I went to college.
Fucking nerds.
I didn't graduate, but I went.
There you go.